Thank you all for being here. My name is Alisa Carpio. I'm a technology evangelist at Intuit. And you want to make sure we're all on the same flight here, you are here for the Engineering the Future of Awesome on Any Device. I will be your moderator, and before we get started, one of the things that I also wanted to make sure is that would love to get feedback and questions using, if you guys are using Twitter, definitely use our hashtag of #Node.js Life. Really appreciate it. So, you guys ready?
We're ready.
Yep.
I know you're still meerkatting over there.
Ready. I'm told
Yeah?
the all four watchers on meerkat that we're starting.
Okay, are you guys ready? Yeah?
All right.
Okay, we're gonna,
Yes.
I know, I kind of feel like I'm putting on this music, we're all in dark jackets, I'm like, we better put on a good show. So anyways, welcome again. And before we actually start the panel discussion, I'm gonna ask my esteemed panel to introduce themselves and just talk a little bit about what they do.
Hi everyone, good morning. I'm Samira Rao, and I am a Director of Engineering at PayPal. I lead engineering for merchant servicing, that is anything the merchants do after a transaction has happened. Quick background about myself, I started out in Dallas in Sabre Airline Solutions working on one of the first rich UI frameworks called OpenRecall. We open sourced that back in 2004. And then I moved on to Yahoo, where I helped build the Web 2.0 versions of Yahoo.com and MyYahoo. It was awesome getting code reviewed by Doug Crockford and performance review of the code by Steve Souders. It was just a phenomenal attempt to be at Yahoo, where I learned so much. And then I got this great opportunity in the Bay Area to be the first applications engineer in a startup called Attributor back in 2006. We went through multiple iterations and multiple pivots over the course of 6 years that I was there. I kind of built the team and laid the technology foundation, and we went through 3 or 4 pivots. And yeah, they all tease me, you did like 4 startups being in one startup. So that was how it was. And I joined PayPal in 2012 fall, and it's been a phenomenal ride so far.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. I'm Alex Balaj. I'm the chief architect for the consumer tax group at Intuit, which basically is TurboTax. So I've been at Intuit for quite a while. It's been almost 16 years. Before I was in Intuit, I actually worked at a couple of medical device companies. So we're talking about engineering the future of awesome. And actually, before I arrived, I didn't even realize all the different medical expos that are here as well. So it's interesting for me to see kind of full circle in my career that I started off in medical devices and to see all the future amazing technologies that are coming out of the medical field. But for me personally, as I said, I've been at Intuit for about 16 years. When I started at Intuit, the company was about 95% revenue from desktop software. So CDs shipped in boxes from Costco and Target and all those places. And so I joined Intuit in Boston in 1999, right after the acquisition of a small company called Boston Light Software. And the job of Boston Light Software was put QuickBooks online. So at that point, certain other smaller competitors and startups were starting to create online accounting software. And so Intuit took kind of a unique approach, and they created a small team and broke it away from the kind of the core team to create an online product. And so it was an amazing time at Intuit to really be leaning into something new. It was really a time of transformation. Really for Intuit, it was about change or die. So you know, continuing to build desktop software just obviously was not a sustainable model. And so over the past 16 years, it's been an amazing journey to see this company that started off shipping CDs, and now about 80% of the revenue comes from online products and mobile products. And so if you look at QuickBooks Online and Mint and TurboTax Online, all the mobile products that we have, it's really about leaning into technology and figuring out how you can use technology to accelerate going to where the customers are. So we definitely discovered in those days that the customers were not going to be buying CDs anymore. They were not going to be installing software anymore. And so what can we do about it? And you know, as we talk today, it's really exciting to kind of tell the story of, for all 3 of us and some of the other companies that we've worked with, about how we've used this technology to transform our companies and really deliver amazing on any device.
Thank
Thanks, Alex. So I'm Dan Shaw, D. Shaw, actually not a pink unicorn. So I am the co-founder, president, and CPO of a bunch of titles at a company called NodeSource. And before I started doing Node, I was doing large-scale Java, doing defense contracting and stuff. About 4 years ago, I really was excited about the potential of what Node had to sort of change the way I was developing software, and packed up the entire family, moved out to San Francisco, the only place at the time where you could get a job. Went through a number of startups, helped scale the largest Node.js startup at the time, Boxer, from 10 million users to about 40 million users. And about a year ago, created NodeSource, where we're helping enterprise companies adopt Node.js and find the optimal path to transforming their technology with that. So it's a lot of fun.
Thanks. One of the things that we are really interested in learning about is, as we talk about engineering the future of awesome, is what is awesome for the customer, Samira?
Absolutely. I think for that, it will be great to give a quick background and kind of give a couple of examples at PayPal. And PayPal, as you know, we processed $228 billion last year in 2014, and 46 billion of that came from mobile. And it grew 68% year over year from 2013. And so if you kind of think about that, as well as the PayPal ecosystem, PayPal's success, the key to PayPal's success is the network effect, as we call it, which is the consumers and the merchants really well connected. And from that standpoint, as a consumer of payments, it is very important for me to basically have the awesome experience in 3 different kind of categories, right? One is the form factor. I want to be able to browse something on my laptop while I'm at home and be able to purchase it while I'm done to go, right? And then context. I want to be able to browse something online and be able to buy it in store, or vice versa. I want to go to a store, hey, okay, this looks cool, let me just check up online and probably buy online, And then geographies. Again, I saw something here, I'm traveling, I want to buy something somewhere else, the exact same payment mechanism should work, and it should all just be totally kind of abstracted out of me and take the hassle out of the whole experience for me, right? And now coming to the merchant side of things, for our merchants, take a small business owner on a typical day, they would go through their front office, if you will, that is the cash register and the point of sale devices. And then the back office, which is where they go and reconcile their transactions during the day. They want to see how they did, the insights, the analytics, the whole thing. And of course, all these need to work across all form factors. So they want to be able to look at their insights and, okay, how am I doing? How can PayPal, for example, partner with me for my growth as a merchant? Also, be able to do some of the things on the go as well. Like, I want to send an invoice. I want to send and request money, So it's all very blended, and it all comes together for both consumers and merchants. And the form factors, context, geographies, everything kind of blends well together. And that's what is awesome in my view for both consumers and merchants, and that's what I would like to say as a consumer.
So that's for the customer. Alex, what is awesome for the engineer?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's great to see a lot of engineers in the room. So if you sit back and think about, for us as engineers, what creates awesome, the first thing is we want to work with cool technology, right? We want to work with the latest things. I think all of us have worked in certain jobs, certain roles where we had to work on some type of legacy technology, something that was actually created at our company, where for some reason someone prior to us decided that they would duplicate something that already exists better solved elsewhere, and yet we're left supporting it, right? Since then, those people have moved on and we're left supporting it. So we all want to work with fun, cool technology and solve really hard problems. The second thing is we want to learn. We want to be in an environment where we can learn new things and constantly grow our skills. So as I walk around and I talk to all the engineers in the Turbotax group and across Intuit, one of the big things I tell them is you can't treat being a software engineer as a science. It's really more of an art. It's a craft. In the same way that you have artists who, you have a paintbrush and there's paint and there's the canvas and there's science behind why the paint goes on the canvas a certain way, but in the end, what's created is art. And with software, there's no single right answer. There's always multiple right answers. There's always the different perspectives on how something can be solved. And so there's a constant need to learn and grow and learn new things, and really need to treat software engineering as a craft. Which then ties together to the last thing about being an awesome engineer, which is you want to make a difference. Right? You want to work on something important. You want to make people's lives better. And so given all those things, given the things that make it really cool to be an engineer, I think now is an amazing time to be an engineer. Right? All the technologies that are available, all the different collaboration that's going on in open source, all the different ways that we can, in fact, deliver value very, very quickly to our customers and discover new things. It's never been a better time to be an engineer. And I think that the other really cool aspect of it is that, going back to the comment about working on legacy technology, we have certain legacy technologies at Intuit the same way a lot of other companies do. And the learning curve to actually start working on something like this is weeks or months or years. Who wants to spend months learning a technology that they don't even really want to be working on in the first place? And so with all the great technologies out there, the way that we collaborate, like I said before, in open source, the learning curve on these technologies is so shallow. It's so easy to get up and going. Later on, I'll be talking about some of the transformations that we've done at Intuit on Node.js. And really, obviously it's with Dan's help and a couple of our colleagues at Netflix and PayPal as well, really learning about the right way to build software. But taking engineers who had never actually done something like that before and actually moving them forward has been a pretty amazing change. And so awesome for engineers is really working on that cool stuff and making a difference.
So as we talk about awesome, for the customer, that's about seamless experience. For the engineer, it's about that delight in the way that they work. But Dan, here's the challenging question for you. What's so challenging about actually delivering awesome in the enterprise?
So in the enterprise, there are two main challenges, monoliths and silos. So one is a technology construct, the other is an organizational construct. So the technology construct of monolithic system, everything gets stuffed into one thing, and that builds a lot of latency in innovation and deploying this one thing. It has to get stuffed into this one sort of master view of technology, and the components that need to be fresh. We need to deliver a unique South by experience. Adding something to that mix becomes challenging and grinds to a halt over time. And on the other end, there's the challenge of silos, where organizational groups begin to sort of close off and stifle innovation in a way because the lack of communication. So they're focused on a singular problem and implementing it in a singular solution, and it ends up creating blinders. And to create and innovate, we need those blinders off. We need to see what's going on in the world. We need to be able to adapt and evolve and bring those things. So in order to begin to address that, you really need to move toward a API-driven systems view. So I like to say API or die. Rip out the vertical monolithic structures, and then you can begin to craft experiences that really do spread across all different devices. Hearing and seeing companies who built up the entire product stack for desktop, entire product stack for mobile, and the challenges that as consumers want all those experiences to be basically one thing. The expectation is that adapting that to the needs of consumers today. You really need that API. You need the data from those services, and the presentation layer is sugar on top of that. So if we bring it to a practical level, the primary way that we're seeing this transformation take place is through a lightweight proxy layer, a front end, back end, as it were. You take the JavaScript services and pull those out into a separate tier. Then the rich front end client can talk to this API layer, make a single HTTP request, and then on the back end, that can go out and call all the other APIs that need to be brought in and deliver a really great experience to users.
I'm going to hang on and go back to something you said around Node.
Okay.
So I'm going to direct this one to Alex. As we talk about Node, how is Intuit using it? I know you kind of prefaced it earlier. You're going to talk about it, so tell us, what's Intuit doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the best things that you can have and one of the worst things that you can have is an existing customer base, right? Because as Dan indicated, you create a successful product and that product is built on a certain platform, and then you say, okay, I want to move to a new platform. And the temptation is you don't want to touch that existing thing because it's making you money, you have lots of customers, and yet I want to evolve. I want to create that new version. And so when we had the Turbotax desktop product and we wanted to go online, there's certainly elements of reuse that occurred between desktop and online, but a lot of it was new. And then we said, oh gosh, we got to go mobile. So we created a product called SnapTax. So SnapTax was 5-star rated in both the Apple Store and the Android Store. Yet, it solved taxes for about 10% of the population. And so it couldn't really delight our customers. A huge percentage of our customers would start using SnapTax. Suddenly they would need some form or they'd have to do some type of calculation. It wasn't available. And we'd say, I'm sorry, go online. What a horrible experience. And so when we look at Node, it was really a solution for a problem where we said we have to start eliminating these silos. We cannot be rebuilding the same product multiple times. So we have at least 5 or 6 duplications of pretty much the same code base with different levels of implementation on each. So the broadest product is the online product. The second broadest was the desktop. The third broadest was the mobile product. Right? We just couldn't keep doing that. And so when we looked at Node, Node was the way for us to really pull the business logic out of the apps and really host them as services. A huge initiative going on at Intuit right now, similar to obviously what's going on in the rest of the industry, is everything as a service. So everything as a service for us started off as how do we create a bunch of Java services that have common functionality like calculating taxes and doing an accounting engine and doing budgets. But really what we realized is that the value of actually pulling out the business logic out of the apps was even greater. So this year we were able to release a new version of TurboTax. There is no SnapTax anymore. And TurboTax Mobile has exactly the same scope as the online product. You can start your taxes on your iPhone. You can go online, go to your iPad, go to your Android device, and it'll remember where you are, and it'll have all the same data. And the only way that we were able to do that is by extracting the business logic out and turning it into a series of services. So the other thing that it allowed us to do is to start the journey of, how many of you out there are actually front-end developers? Yeah, so as front-end developers, the worst thing that you could hear is, all right, so I built my user experience, now I got to go talk to a services guy. And the services guy, the back-end guy, has to build my service. What do? Well, that services guy is doing their job, right? Even in an agile world, it's 2 weeks, right, or 4 weeks before they build a service. So what Node allowed us to do is to allow these front-end developers to actually create the services themselves. This front-end, back-end that Dan was talking about, where obviously they'll connect to some stuff in the back-end, that there's some other back-end services there, but really decoupling the rate at which the front-end developers could create awesome from the back-end developers really building our business was really, really critical for us. And the last thing that I'll call out is, Intuit has some great products. We have the tax line, QuickBooks, but if you look at the moniker of Intuit, if you go to our website, it says we simplify the business of life. And so there are a bunch of other places that we'd like to simplify the business of life. Other places that are difficult or hard to figure out. And how do we allow our teams to experiment really rapidly and get out in front of customers and actually try things out? So we used to think that delivering something in 3 or 6 months and getting it out in front of a customer was fast. It's not fast, right? Fast is a week. Fast is a day, right? So if you have an idea in the morning, you should be able to get out in front of customers in the afternoon. And so that's the mindset that we have, and Node really as a technology is helping us do that.
So we've learned from Alex. Samira, how is PayPal using Node?
Yeah, I think this is a great question. It's been an incredible journey over the last 2.5, 3 years. I can share my own personal experience. As I kind of wrapped up the startup and I was ready to figure out what my next gig was. Here was PayPal, awesome business, great, tremendous growth over the years. The technology stack was not like inspiring. This is where I would be really happy, right? That's a natural tendency for an engineer when you go through that, and that was where I was when I joined, and that's when we started our journey on Node as well. And it's been a fascinating journey, and I consider Node having made a huge difference at PayPal and kind of totally turned the game around, if you will, in 3 major aspects, right? The first one is the culture or the mindset, and the second one is around the talent that we were able to bring in, and the third one is of course engineering. And I'll go through each of these in a little bit of detail. The first one was, again, the culture, right? I think if you think about a payments company with all the PCI regulations and compliance and each country having its own regulations, there will be a natural tendency to be a little bit conservative, just from on the outset. Got to be cautious. Obviously, security and availability are paramount. Absolutely no compromises there. So when that was the state of things, what Node was able to do was be that catalyst for the mindset shift at PayPal, right? So now it kind of helped transition the company, if you will, from this conservative mindset to more of a explorative mindset, and obviously always taking care of security and availability on all the fundamental things. Kind of do that transformation in terms of the culture. I think that's been a huge win with Node coming in. And of course, with that, all the open source technologies we started leveraging, and how we started contributing to open source with Kraken and Nemo and a bunch of other frameworks that we have rolled out in the last 2 or 3 years, right? And then talent. So talent, again, was, as I was sharing my experience, it's amazing how you attract talent by just being open about things and having this open source culture, if you will, where you are willing to, number one, leverage open source and be able to contribute to open source in a big way as well. I think that's been, again, a phenomenal success for us, and having some awesome talent coming in, working on these kind of hard problems, also contributing to open source as well. And engineering is obviously the big piece of it. So the way we approached getting Node into PayPal, and again, if you think about a company which, as Alex was sharing, billions and billions of dollars, and you don't want to go wrong in some sense, right? And so we took a very methodical approach there. We sit together, we just hash out what the experience needs to be. We go talk to the customers. Do you think you like this? Do you think this is something that you could use? Does it solve all the problems that you're wanting to solve? And then come back and then implement whatever needs to be to get that experience to life, right? And if you think about it, it's a very lightweight prototyping stack. And that's how we started kind of seeding Node into the ecosystem at PayPal. And then we slowly progressed to piloting it on one of our products that we wanted to take live, and benchmark that with the existing stack that we already had at PayPal. And then what we figured was, number one, the data was really promising. Node did much better than the existing stack with much less horsepower on our CPUs than what the existing stack was doing. So it did two things. Number one, it was a kind of indication of, okay, yeah, Node is the way to go. And number two, it gave us the data points for us to kind of bring about that change at PayPal. And definitely that's been a huge help. And the other thing, and for what I do in merchant servicing, if it's a portal, right? A lot of the merchant functionalities need to come together in this one portal. And us having gravitated towards an all JavaScript stack now, what that has done is we can create an entire app as a widget now, which means we can just have app as an endpoint which gets plugged into the portal at real time, and then you don't have these built-time dependencies going on. So a lot of these benefits like this across the board definitely has helped PayPal in a huge way in leveraging after we leverage Node. Thanks.
So we've heard about innovation at Intuit from Alex. We've heard about innovation at PayPal from Samira. This is for all of you guys, but I'm going to start with Dan at the end there. Dan, how do we innovate as a community?
Right, so innovating at scale requires knowledge and collaboration, and it's really important to bring in communications. It's fascinating, how important communication is in an engineering organization, and how the advantages of something that facilitates communication actually outsteps the technology choices. We at NodeSource help companies adopt Node, and I get asked all the time, like, how do you sell Node? And my answer is I don't. Never once had to convince companies at a technology level. It's much more a communication process. How do we introduce the new technology in, not disenfranchise existing team members who are very dedicated to other technology stacks, and how do we build the knowledge and trust around the new technology to excel. It's fascinating with Node that with smaller applications and Node's sort of small modules principles, how it excels at building communication. So you reduce the surface area of what you're talking about, and suddenly you can have, breaking down the silos, individuals from completely different organization groups participating and collaborating on a logging module or sessions module because they can grasp that. They might not be deep in the entire stack to be able to go and digest the entire domain expertise for the large scale application. But if you take and apply the needs there to the much smaller thing, they can excel. They can really begin to collaborate, communicate, and innovate in whole new ways. So this is the single greatest impact of Node in the enterprise. And if you look at what the enterprise has been trying to do for the last 10 years, really driving agile and embracing that, trying to inject process that facilitates that. Node has sort of swept that up and accelerated that process and really made that social transformation possible in a meaningful way.
Samira, Alex?
Yeah, so I think great points there. I think we see that a lot at PayPal in terms of, again, from a community standpoint, as I was saying earlier, we've tried the whole components model, right, where we have the central team that would do components, which can then be shared across many teams. And we've tried it, I think we tried it like twice, both of them failed. Because you never will be able to keep up with all the innovation that is happening. When you bring in great talent and bring in the talent that wants to work on stuff that they're really passionate about, there is no way one team can keep up with everything that's going on across the company, right? And so we figured, okay, here's a great opportunity for us to really have an open source model, if you will, internally, right? We call that inner sourcing now. And where teams just organically do something, and then other teams collaborate and say, okay, I'll just send a pull request and make this component better, and I'll leverage that. And then it's been amazing the kind of traction we've been able to gain because of that. Just even within the company, we've been able to do that. And again, from a community standpoint, we have our own internal kind of Node days, if you will, that we do, or Node or JavaScript Conf, if you will. And it's amazing the kind of ideas and the kind of passion you can see there with engineers coming up with these really cool things that all of a sudden everyone leverages and everyone contributes to it. I think it kind of starts from there, and it's a natural progression to contributing to open source, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, great points. We can always move faster when we work together, when we stop having to re-implement the same things over and over again. And I know, I grew up an engineer, I'm still an engineer, and the mindset as a young engineer is, here's a hard problem and I'm gonna solve it on my own. I'm gonna figure this out. And as you grow up as an engineer, you really realize that you can lift so much more when you actually work with others. And so, Dan and Samira both talked about how internally within our companies, we're really leading change to get our engineers to actually collaborate more together. Certainly, if you know you're working with an open source project, then you know you're collaborating. But when you bring it back inside, it's a mindset that you really want to work together. So that being said, working inside together and collaborating inside of your own company, that's not enough. It's necessary, but not sufficient. And so a couple of years ago, PayPal set up the first Node Day. And then last November, we at Intuit, with the help of PayPal and NodeSource, we set up the second Node Day last November. And that was really about bringing together these companies that have this mindset of, yes, we're going to work together. We're going to figure this out together. And it's much more than a standard open source collaboration model. It's more about when we're solving these kinds of problems that are quite honestly big company problems, lots of customers, lots of revenue, lots of traffic. How can we in fact collaborate on this? So Samira talked about Kraken, which was the PayPal project. At Intuit, we're about to release something called Tank. So if you look at, you can imagine the businesses that Intuit is in, it's very peaky, especially TurboTax, that a lot of our customers show up at the same time. And so we have to be very, very creative in how we test our product. How do we make sure that we're actually going to be able to handle all that load? So, the great thing about that is that we're actually looking to open source the entire project so that others can collaborate as well. They can learn from us, and you know what? They'll look at that open source project and they'll make it better, and it'll be better for us too. And so there really has to be this commitment to what we call it Intuit core versus context. So core is really it's the most important part of our business. It's really how we define a competitive advantage. And that's really what we build. That's kind of internal to Intuit. But if something is context, which is important, but it's not how you differentiate yourself as a company, you really need to be thinking about sharing context. Because only by sharing that context can we actually collaborate together. And so, Node was kind of the first start to that, but I know we've had a couple of great meetings between Intuit and eBay, Intuit and PayPal, where we've talked about, hey, what's coming? What are you guys working on? Oh, well, here's what we're working on. And so what we're hoping to do is to really take more and more advantage of these situations where we can actually work together, because it's really through this collaboration that we can actually move fast.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Because to your point on Node Day, for example, now we are hearing requests from, for example, EMEA and APAC, where can we host Node Day there? And if you think about that, we are open sourcing Node Day itself. If you think about it, because now, sure, please go ahead, have it in EMEA, APAC, and I know a few of my teams are like, okay, can we do this in Bangalore? Absolutely, go for it. I think it's exactly as you said. It's a mindset shift where all of a sudden we are approaching the same thing from a different angle, and we're all better because of it.
Yeah, the one thing that I would add to that is, having directly experienced this at Intuit, getting companies who don't behave that way to start behaving that way, it's hard, but it's worth it. And there are great models out there. There's Netflix, there's PayPal, companies that are taking things that you would think, oh my God, that you're really going to open source that? You're really going to collaborate on that? And they are. Right? And so leading Intuit, being one of the people who's helping lead Intuit through that journey, I'll tell you it's worth it. So as you go back to your companies, if you're not one of those companies, it's worth it. The kind of collaboration you get, the doors that it opens when these companies who do act that way see you behaving that way, the amount that you get back is going to be far beyond what you put out.
Yeah, I think again great points, and it's again with the example that I was giving. When I joined to where it is right now, PayPal, it's a complete kind of phase shift, if you will. Right now, whenever I was talking at Node Summit a few weeks back in San Francisco, and a couple of them came to me and if PayPal can do this at that scale and a PCI compliant company, we can do this too. Mm-hmm. You start hearing these things where, okay, now we have made a difference there. I think.
Yeah, this is happening. At PayPal, the amount of financial institutions that are adopting this. Other examples like Bank of America and MasterCard, all finding that same path and really bringing innovation internally through Node.
So we've heard a little bit about the past. We've heard a little bit about the present in terms of how you innovate, both as within and externally as a community. This is again for all of you, and then just to let you all know, audience, this is going to come back to you also. I'm going to try to do an interactive thing. What do you think is next, Samira? So I'll just start with you, but again, it's for all of you. For Awesome on any device.
Yeah, I think it's a great segue to that, which is, okay, now we have built a great foundation on which we need to kind of take this to the next level. And again, if you look at all the stuff that is going on today, and if you just think about payments, okay, now it is online and then in store and then all the form factors and definitely the different contexts and the geographies and all that. And now take that to Internet of Things. What does this mean for IoT? And if we were to have a payments transaction in some sense on IoT, what do we need to power that, right? And what kind of foundations do we lay to power something like that? I think it becomes, all of a sudden now we are not talking about experience from a UI perspective, but experience from, what do consumers go through when they have to interact with something like that? And it's a very interesting use case to solve. And again, we're exploring a lot of things around some of those things, as well as things like, okay, can we leverage all the stuff that we have done till now, where we have created this whole separation, service-oriented architecture and layered approach to how we build things, and of course, modules and components and everything. And how can we leverage some of this for our cross form factor world ecosystem, right? For example, we're exploring a lot on React now. Okay, how does would React be really helpful in us approaching this in a more componentized or a modular way, where we can just slot in a certain experience, as Dan, you were mentioning, those minimal experiences that can be plugged into different other experiences, and then React Native sounds very promising. I mean, we will definitely explore that once it's out. I know it's supposed to be out sometime this month, where, okay, now can we write JavaScript and have it run on a native app as a native app, These are the things that will definitely change how we, number one, build things and how we experience these things to have a very seamless experience across the board, I think.
Yeah, the future is wonderful and promising and a little bit scary all at the same time. But I think the most important takeaway in terms of the future of building software that can really deliver awesome on any device is, it's not about getting your customer to come to you, it's about you going to your customer. And so if you look at what's going on now with wearables, with smart homes, Internet of Things, smart cars, the same way that 15 years ago companies like Intuit realized you can't depend on people buying CDs anymore. Well, we can't really depend on our customers coming to us anymore. We have to go where they are. And so they will be wearing Apple Watches or Pebbles, right? They will have, anybody who's seen a Tesla, the center console of the Tesla looks like a smartphone, right? It's basically a computer with four wheels. And so it's about, how can we scale? How can we in fact create apps and break them apart into these little pieces, these modules? We call them job grain services at Intuit. How do you break them apart so you can deliver some or all of that experience everywhere your customers are? And you're not going to do that by adding hundreds or thousands of engineers to your group. The phrase that I use over and over again with my team, and they're probably sick of hearing it, but I say it anyway, which is, turn this into an engineering problem. Every time some problem of scale comes up, we can't create that much that fast. We can't go to 20 devices at the same time. You can. Turn it into an engineering problem. And it's amazing what you'll come up with. And so when we, like I said before, we realized that despite the fact that SnapTax is cool, it just doesn't solve the problem. So let's turn that into an engineering problem. And so now suddenly, because we could deliver in 1 year a full scope tax product on a mobile device, we had like 300% growth. Right now, 1 out of every 3 tax preparers actually uses a mobile device. So at the same time that we thought, we saw the transition from desktop to the web, it's not even web anymore. It's about whatever device they're on. And so the future of awesome on any device is about making sure that you're prepared. And you have to have the mindset that what you're creating could theoretically show up on any device that's out there. And you can't wait. You can't wait 6 months or a year to spin up a project to deliver something that works on these devices. You got to be ready now.
Well, so taking that and putting it on an implementation detail level, I really see cards and these smaller widgety experiences becoming more and more common. So if we talked about how you have the application and mobile experiences, really since we now have the APIs to work with, pulling all of that out of the application and putting that in a Twitter card, putting that in a card that comes up in various different experiences, and an extension of that, if you're a Slack user, integrations. So though they're external platforms that we're building experiences for, that we don't even own the platform, but it is a core experience where users want to be. So you deliver that experience crafted, targeted at facilitating that need for the end user inside that. I see that really exploding.
To your point on engineering solving a lot of the problems, I think it's probably I'll share a quick example of that, right? So one of the things that we go through all the time, and again, as in my world, especially around merchant portal, if you think about it, the fact that we were able to do apps as widgets helped us cut down our development and rollout time from literally 2 sprints to half a day now, in a case, because now moving away from build time dependencies gains us so much, especially in a big company, right? Because you go through so many things to push something to production, that entire thing is kind of taken out of the equation, and all of a sudden you have just this one app that you need to take care of and push to production. Is a totally different ball game than working with 15 other teams to have a particular component plugged in at build time and then push to production. And some of these tie very closely to, okay, sure, you can think of it as an operational or more of a project management kind of challenge, unless you figure out a way to solve it through engineering, where all of a sudden it became a half a day problem. This is interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating. If you think of PayPal as a thing,
I think they're a company.
They're a company. Like as a product or a service. It's you might think of it as one application, but the reality is it's like 40 plus applications. So just wrapping your head around that, it's not one thing. It's a bunch of different things, and I know the team at PayPal has gone through a very interesting process where continually finding ability to have a service do less. I think it's absolutely fascinating to see.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it definitely brings the whole. The challenge always is, with so many different teams working across the globe, and obviously time zone differences and everything, how do you still keep the experience very consistent and seamless, right? And it's a challenge across the board. I mean, I was in the startup, even in a startup where we were like a 20-member team, it was still a challenge.
Sure.
I think that doesn't change, and how you innovate and figure out solutions to solve some of that is what keeps me going.
So I love those points. And one other quick thing is the same way that you have to be where your customer is, we spent historically so much time trying to figure out what features do we put into each product, and really in the future your customer decides, right? You have to make sure that whatever features, capabilities you have, they're available to your customer when they need them, and the ones that they don't need, they aren't there. And so really that's the challenge. So it's a combination of both the software and the device, so delivering it the right way and being exactly what they need. And so the only way you can really get there is by kind of breaking them into these chunks.
Absolutely.